Hello everyone, John 12 back here again with another video, and today I'm doing another dream casting video. I don't know if this is going to become like a new thing or a new segment on my channel, but I don't know, I was just thinking about, I was watching RoboCop. I don't know how I just got into that, but I just started watching RoboCop. Not for the first time ever, of course. I obviously am a huge fan of the RoboCop series, but just earlier I was watching RoboCop and I was just thinking like, this could have been like the best Batman movie if it was a Batman movie. Like if you rewatch RoboCop and just took out Murphy and put Bruce Wayne, that could have been the best Batman movie of all time. And then when I think of it in the timing and the year, RoboCop, the first original one, came out in 1987, a year after one of the defining moments in Batman history of all time, which is of course The Dark Knight Returns. Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. And then several years after that, Batman 89 happens. And then I was just trying to think of what if something happened where Batman 89 does not exist. You know, Tim Burton version of Batman, Michael Keaton's Batman, obviously, you know, Jack Nicholson's Joker, all that type of stuff does not exist. But what could have filled the spot of a Batman 89? And I was just thinking, like, what if they did a Dark Knight Returns full-on adaptation? Now, for those of you who are saying, like, what are you doing, sir? You're trying to ruin my fucking childhood by rewriting history and changing things how you would like them? Well, that's why it's called a Dreamcast. It's not exactly going to happen. It's not like I have a time machine and going to go back in time and ruin your childhood. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it would have been interesting if something else happened rather than, you know, Batman 89, you know, because as much as I love Batman 89, and as much as it has, like, I guess the tone and maybe theme of Dark Knight Returns, it's not full-on Dark Knight Returns. If you rewatch Batman 89, it's mostly inspired by The Killing Joke, which Tim Burton himself even said, you know, he said it himself. He said it was mostly inspired by The Killing Joke. You know, he's not a comic book guy, but the big thing that he kept in his head while doing the project was, of course, having Batman battle the Joker. You know, so obviously that was his main focus on that project. But I was just thinking, like, what if they didn't do that and just went on full-on Dark Knight Returns? Who would have really played the cast of Dark Knight Returns? Who would direct it and who would write it? And I think the director of RoboCop should have, Paul Verhoeven. He would have been the perfect director of Dark Knight Returns, of Batman 89, if there would have been. You know, I mean, when you rewatch RoboCop, it has a lot of the hits and beats of, like, a Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns. You know, it's very dark, it's very gritty, it's violent as hell. The main protagonist is going through deep hellfire, and obviously there's commercialization all throughout the film. There's you split from your current storyline and then you just stop watching for a second to just deal with news feeds and fucking commercials for shit that doesn't even exist but exists into the world of the RoboCop movie. And that's just hysterical and amazing and just great filmmaking, and that's presented in Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns. When you read Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller always stops from your current story, from whatever Batman is doing, to go into the news feeds and just see what they're talking about in current social status. And that's something that I think they missed really big with the Batman movies, like social status. I mean, like, they kind of got it with, you know, the Dark Knight trilogy and whatnot, where having, you know, Batman in a much wider scale and stuff, but just not to the terms of Dark Knight Returns. And I think Paul would have been a way better director. I mean, of course, I'm not saying Tim Burton sucked at 89. I love 89. You know, before I got into comics, there were two things that got me into not only DC Comics, but in comic book general, and of course, the Batman, is Batman's 89, and of course, the animated series, Batman, the original 89, not 89, the animated series. Those are things that got me into the shit, but at the same time, when you rewatch it today, it's something that's kind of weird. You know, there's things that don't hold up, but then there's other things that do, and it's a really weird thing. And of course, the majority of it is really Tim Burton-y. It's too gothic. It's too like his world. It's like it doesn't have the feel and hits and beats of Batman from the comic books, so which is unfortunate. But I think Paul could have done it perfectly. You know, have the writing team that you had on RoboCop fused with Paul's directing would have made an awesome, epic Batman Dark Knight Returns '89 movie. You know, back in '89, they were going to do this movie overall. After post '86, they were going to do a dark, gritty Batman. And it was one of those things where it could have gone either way, but of course it went the way it went. And that's a good thing, but at the same time, it just makes me think as to what would have happened if you had this team do it post RoboCop. It would have just been awesome. Now let's move off of that and go into who I would like to see don the cape and cowl. Who would have been a great Batman? Of course, there was various other people, actors, who were on the short list to becoming Batman prior to to Keaton. Obviously, there was like the big one, which is Bill Murray, which is funny, and also the Baldwins and also various other people. And of course, these are the things that really I don't really want to choose from their list, but if I had to choose who would be my definitive Dark Knight Returns Batman, especially back versus circa Batman '89, would be Clint Eastwood. I mean, like, I know this is referenced a lot of people say this, but when you go back and like watch the Dirty Harry series, like all of them, he does have like that detective badass, you know, dark, broody Batman-esque feel to him. You know, it's like almost like he was Batman before, you know, there was a Batman series. You know, it was just kind of cool to, like, if you just go back and watch it, you kind of see it there. You know, you just watch it and he's like the ultimate cop that doesn't die and who doesn't give a shit about the law in and of itself, which is ironic. And that's Batman right there. It's just awesome. I mean, if you just had Clint Eastwood back in those days prior to '89, had him like work out like a motherfucker, got really big, and more than likely put him in a muscle suit, kind of like they did with all superheroes back in the day, he would have been an awesome Batman. It would just been an amazing like performance from him. I'm pretty sure he would have killed it. It would have been awesome. But moving off of that, another key player, and of course the Batman franchise, but of course Dark Knight Returns, which is the Joker. Now, casting a Joker is a very intricate thing. You know, you can't really just go ahead and just be like, okay, I want that guy. It has to be, you know, very perfectly placed. And I'm not saying that Jack Nicholson was a horrible choice, but I'm not going with him because, I don't know, I always felt that Jack Nicholson could have been a great Joker if he did it when he was younger. Because, I don't know, I just felt, every time I watch it, I always feel like he feels so old in comparison to Michael Keaton's Batman. You know, like, I don't know, it just feels weird. Like, the imagery is just weird. Like, when you're a kid, it's awesome, it's badass, and when you watch it today, it's still awesome and badass, but it's just kind of weird. You know, and I would have liked an actor who at least looked a little younger comparison to Batman. Because even though Joker doesn't have technically an age in the comic books or in the Dark Knight Returns, when you read the Dark Knight Returns, you can see that Joker is definitely significantly younger than Bruce Wayne, 50s or 60s year old fucking Bruce Wayne. So it's definitely a thing. But when I go back and think about it, back in the 1980s, which actor could have played a great Joker other than Jack Nicholson? I have to go with Tim Curry. I mean, like, I know this has been thrown around a lot, and he was also on the short list to play Joker, but I don't know, I always would have liked to see what he would have done if he had the chance to play the Joker. He just looks like he would have played a great Joker, especially a Dark Knight Returns Joker. I mean, that in and of itself would have been awesome, because back in those days, he had that feel and look to him. You know, he just, like, if he had, like, the makeup and the green hair, and you put a suit on him, the same one from Dark Knight Returns, he would have just owned that role. He would have owned that role. I mean, it would just been his definitive performance of all time. I mean, when you rewatch his stuff back in the day, back in the 80s specifically, his work he's a character actor, and he just has that feel, and I'm just saying that he would have been a great Joker. Like, if you just gave him the role and, like, he was faced off with, like, a Clint Eastwood Batman, he would have just been like, I'm here. It would just, he would have owned the role, that's all I'm going to say. But the biggest and most defined pinnacle character that you need to have in a Dark Knight Returns story, which is, of course, a Superman. The first ever crossover ever, if it could have happened. I know it's a big thing that's been developed to shit, and of course they're currently doing it now, but back in the day, it was a perfect opportunity to do that before anybody had an idea of doing a cinematic universe, other than TV shows, cartoons, and of course the comic books. And it would have just been amazing. Of course, it wouldn't be all the way there, like they could have done it today, but then again, it still would have been amazing, especially with, the right, effects teams and whatnot. But of course, the only definitive Superman that could have played Superman in a Dark Knight Returns circa 1989, realm, has to be Christopher Reeves. I mean, I know this is post his Superman franchise, which of course failed at the end, but can you really think of another guy who could have played Superman at that time period? Nobody. No one could play Superman other than Christopher Reeves. If you weren't Reeves, you can't be Superman. It just, and of course this is in between, the horrible accident, and where he was still, of course, okay. So I think he would have been just an awesome Superman. And it would just, come on, it would have just been awesome to have Christopher Reeves' Superman face off against a Batman. That would have just been amazing. That would have been like the defining moment in comic book history before any of this shit. Before there was a cinematic universe, before there was any of this shit. It would have just been, that would be the fucking nail on the coffin to the son of a bitches who want to copy shit. It would have just been amazing. But I think that's going to be it. I can't really go on any further because when I think of who could be a James Gordon or who could be a Carrie Kelly, then things get squirrely because I can't really choose from who I would really want to see play a Carrie Kelly because more than likely, it would be a bad choice. Because first off, kid actors, especially back in the day, kind of sucked. No offense to kid actors back in the day, specifically from the 80s, but all they did were sitcoms and John Hughes movies. And not that I hate those, but in a serious, greedy comic book movie, especially the one that they did in the 80s, God, that just wouldn't work, especially them. Kid actors of today are way better from kid actors back in the day, and that's my personal opinion, but I don't know, it just would have not worked. And because then you would, every time you would, look at, that Batman, Superman movie back in the day, all you would think of is, that's that kid from Full House. Fucking shit. So that's just my personal opinion. That's what I would, personally perceive it as, but you know what, that's going to be it. That's all you really need as a Dreamcast. Your Batman, your Superman, and your Joker, because that's, of course, the defining characters of The Dark Knight Returns. But that's going to be it for this video. I don't know really what to call it. It was just something that came to my head, and I just wanted to talk about it and give my thoughts. But what do you guys think? If in a world where 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie did not exist, and the Warner Brothers and DC were going to do a defining Batman movie that was full on Dark Knight Returns, who would you want it to be? What would you like it to be like? Who would you want be in it? And of course, who would you want to direct it, write it? Who would you obviously want to play Batman, the Joker, and of course Superman, and of course all their various characters, like Two-Face, the Mutant Leader, and Carrie Kelly and whatnot. Who would you want them to play as? Which actors and actresses? I personally gave you a few of mine. I would rather have the director and writers of RoboCop. I also would like, personally, Clint Eastwood to play Batman, Christopher Reeves, Superman, and of course Tim Curry as the Joker. That's just my personal choice. But that's going to be it for this video. This has been my Dreamcast of Dark Knight Returns movie circa 1989, if there ever would have been. It's one of those fantasies that I have. I just think of God, what would the DC, not only the DC, but what would the fucking comic book movie industry be like if that movie existed, prior to 89 Batman? If that movie happened, what would the comic book industry be like today? It's just a fantasy of mine that I'd like to think about. What do you guys think? That's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed. It's been John 12.